Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Obenauf with Wild Wealth Management Group, and today we're going to talk about Roth IRA basics. Thank you for joining us. We're going to go over some of the advantages of utilizing an Roth IRA in retirement and some of the qualifications and requirements around those accounts and seeing if we can utilize that in your portfolios. I joined Wild Wealth back in 2019. In the Scottsdale office. I studied business at University of Wisconsin in Milwaukee and spent a lot of my time as part of Scottsdale Active 2030 Club, which is an organization of 50 men that are between 20 and 40 years old, raising money for local children's charities here in the Valley. As part of Wild Wealth, we have an office in Glendale, Scottsdale, Tempe, as well as Payson, and these are some of our advisors in those locations. And then our wonderful support staff that are the backbone of Wild Wealth and help us with the day-to-day activities that we as advisors have going on. So let's jump into some of the Roth requirements and whatnot. Contributions are made on an after-tax basis. So you get your paycheck and then you can contribute to that Roth IRA after those taxes have been paid. There's no upfront tax benefit like there could be with a traditional IRA. And qualified distributions are entirely free from federal tax. Some state tax may be a little bit different from federal income tax. They are tax-free when you go to make those qualified distributions. As far as the difference between traditional IRA and Roth IRA, there's a few of them. Traditional IRAs can make annual contributions if you have taxable compensation. They're deductible contributions depending on your income, filing status, and the different coverage benefit you have through your employer retirement plan. You can make after-tax contributions, which is non-deductible, and distributions are subject to the federal income tax except for the after-tax contribution. Distributions prior to age 59 and a half may be subject to a 10% penalty. Again, there are some things that qualify to avoid that 10% penalty, which we'll talk through. Distributions are required. Minimum distributions are required at age 72. Basically, that's the IRS saying that it's time to start paying taxes on those accounts since we have been putting money in before tax, and it's time for Uncle Sam to get his portion. So we do have to start withdrawing at that age, whether we want to or not. As far as the Roth IRA goes, again, contributions can be made on the taxable compensation that you have. So you pay that income tax and then you can contribute to the Roth. Your ability to contribute to a Roth IRA depends on your income levels and filing status. There is a scheduled phase out for them. At X amount of dollars, you can contribute less than if you're below that floor. And once you get to that ceiling, then you can no longer contribute to that Roth. All contributions are after tax. There is no upfront deduction. Again, we covered that a little bit. Qualified distributions are entirely free from federal income tax, as we discussed. And non-qualified distributions, the earnings are subject to federal income tax and tax may apply under age 59 and a half. There is no lifetime required distributions on the Roth IRAs. Another caveat there, the difference between the traditional IRA is that the funds grow tax deferred, and in the Roth, the funds grow tax deferred and tax free. So once we get to that point where we want to start taking money out, we will not have to pay the tax on the gains in there. Qualified distributions are income tax free. For a distribution to be qualified, it must meet a few requirements, or one of these requirements. You definitely have to satisfy the 5-year holding period, and you have to have a qualifying event or age 59 and a half. Disability would qualify. First time home buying up to $10,000 would be a qualified event in which you can take the money out before age 59 and a half and not get hit with that penalty. And then death obviously would also be a qualifier. The 5-year holding period. 5-year holding period begins on the first day of the tax year for which you first made a contribution. And that's annual rollover or conversion to any Roth IRA. The 5-year holding period ends after 5 calendar years. and then you're able to start taking those distributions. It applies to your beneficiaries after your death as well. Spousal beneficiary can roll over to own a Roth IRA or treat your Roth IRA as his or her own. In either case, the 5-year holding period begins on the earlier of January 1st of the tax year your spouse first established any Roth IRA, or January 1st of tax year after you first established any Roth IRA. Period begins on January 1st of tax year for which you made a contribution to any Roth IRA. You can make an annual contribution to an IRA for a tax year until April 15th of the following year. So if you want to get a little bit lower in your tax bracket by contributing to an IRA, a traditional IRA, if you qualify for it being tax deductible, you have up until April 15th to do that. And if you make a regular contribution to the first Roth IRA on April 15th and designate contribution for 2019, 5-year holding period begins on January 1st of that year, even though you made that contribution April 15th. Qualified distributions. We're going to go through an example here. So at age 60, if we established the first Roth IRA on December 31st of 2020 by converting a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA, you must have a qualifying event and satisfy the 5-year holding period. The qualifying event has occurred. You've attained age 59 and a half. 5-year holding period begins January 1st of 2020. 5-year holding period ends December 31st of 2024. The tax-free qualified withdrawals from this Roth IRA and any other Roth IRA you own available anytime after December 31st of 2024. So even though we're at that qualifying event of being 59 and a half, we have the obligation of meeting that 5-year holding period since we established it in that year, December 31st of 2020. Here's another example of a qualified distribution. This person is 35 years old. Generally speaking, we have to get to age 59 and a half unless we meet one of the other qualifying events. So they first established the Roth IRA on June 1st of 2020 by making a rollover from a 401k plan to a Roth IRA. They must have a qualifying event and satisfy that 5-year holding period. So the 5-year holding period began on January 1st of 2020, even though they contributed on June 1st of 2020, because it goes by that first day of that calendar taxable year. So that would be January 1st, and our contribution was made on June 1st. The 5-year holding period would then end on December 31st of 2024. And the tax-free qualified available from this Roth IRA and any other Roth IRA you own in 2044 after you attain age 59 and a half. Again, there's some other things in which you could qualify, such as disability, such as that first-time home purchase up to $10,000. After December 31st, 2024, if you become disabled or die, or after December 31st, 2024, if you have that first-time home purchase, which we just touched on. Here's an example number 3. You inherit a Roth IRA from your mother in 2020. Your mother established her first Roth IRA in 2017 by making a regular annual contribution. You must have a qualifying event and satisfy the 5-year holding period. Qualifying event is your mother's death, because as we know, death, disability, or first-time home purchase are qualifying events. However, the 5-year holding period begins January 1st of 2017. The 5-year holding period then ends December 31st of 2021. The tax-free qualified withdrawals are available from the inherited Roth IRA anytime after December 31st of 2021 because we had the qualifying event of death and we met that 5-year holding period. Non-qualified Roth distributions. This means you haven't satisfied the 5-year holding period or you don't have a qualifying event. Your contributions that you made come out tax-free. So if you put $5,000 in, $5,000 comes out tax-free. Your contributions come out first. The taxable earnings come out last. So if we contributed $5,000, the account grew to $6,000, that $5,000 we initially contributed would be what would come out. And then we would touch that other $1,000. Earnings are subject to income tax and 10% penalty tax unless exceptions apply. Ways to fund a Roth. You can make regular annual contributions. You can convert traditional IRA to Roth IRA money. So essentially we would be paying the tax on that conversion to traditional, since we did not pay the tax when it went in as traditional money, since that is before taxes are taken out, we would then have to pay those taxes in order to make the conversion to the Roth. Rollover from an eligible plan to a Roth IRA. And then funding annual Roth contributions. You can contribute up to $6,000 to a Roth IRA for the year of 2020. Individuals age 50 or older can make additional catch-up contributions of $1,000. So essentially, if you're over age 50, you can contribute $7,000 for the 2020 tax year in order to expedite the growth of your Roth account since you're getting closer to retirement age. Annual contributions may be limited depending on income level and filing status. And this is again where we're going to talk about what we touched on briefly, which was the phase out in the floor for contributions and the ceiling when it comes to the income. So 2020 Roth contributions, if you're single, you can make more than $124,000, but less than $139,000, you are still eligible. So you can make your full contribution up to $124,000 in income. You can contribute the max, which is that $6,000. Once you start breaking over that $124,000 in income, there will then be a phase out, and you will be able to contribute less than that $6,000 on a phased out schedule up to $139,000. After we get above $139,000 or more, we can no longer contribute to the Roth. If you're married filing joint on your taxes, if you make more than $196,000 but less than $206,000, you still fall into the parameters where you can contribute on that phase out schedule. Make less than $196,000, you can make the full contribution for that year. If you make more than $206,000 when filing joint, you can no longer contribute. If you are married and filing separate, you make more than $0 but less than $10,000, you can contribute. If you make more than $10,000, you cannot contribute. So I do get questions quite often about contributing or converting a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA and why somebody may want to do that. So if we're looking at trying to have a tax-free asset later on in life, because we're either concerned that our taxable income down the road is going to be much higher than where we're at it today, or we just simply want to get those taxes out of the way because we know exactly where we sit right now and we're fine paying them. They are taxed in the year of the conversion as if you took a withdrawal, but 10% early distribution does not apply. So what that means is that we're still going to pay that income tax that we did not pay when we initially put the money into the traditional IRA, but we are going to avoid that 10% penalty. The trade-off of the immediate taxation for possibility of tax-free qualified distributions in the future, which we touched on. You can also convert simple IRAs after the 2-year waiting period and SEP IRAs to Roth IRAs as well. Ways to do that conversion is a rollover, trustee to trustee transfer, same trustee transfer, and then calculating the conversion taxes. So they're taxed again as if you took a withdrawal from the traditional IRA. The 10% tax penalty does not apply. It may be recaptured if you make a non-qualified withdrawal from your Roth IRA within 5 years of any conversion. Because the Roth, again, we have to meet the 5-year holding period. Calculating the conversion tax is continued. If you've made only deductible contributions to your traditional IRAs, then the entire amount you convert is subject to income tax. So what that means, from an IRA's perspective, is that if you are putting money into, it's similar to if you're putting money into your traditional 401k. The money goes in before tax. Since you have never paid tax on the money that has gone in there, the entire amount that you are converting on your contributions is subject to income tax. Again, IRA taxable, deductible contributions and earnings, non-taxable, non-deductible contributions. If you've made non-deductible after-tax contributions to your traditional IRA, any distribution consists of pro rata amount of taxable and non-taxable dollars. You can't just convert non-taxable dollars in a traditional IRA for a tax-free conversion. You must aggregate all traditional IRAs you own, including SEP and simple IRAs, when calculating the taxable amount of a withdrawal or a conversion. Who can convert to a Roth? You can't convert an inherited traditional IRA to a Roth IRA. Special rules apply to spouse beneficiaries. Using the backdoor Roth method, even if you can't contribute to a Roth IRA because you've exceeded those income limits, whether you're filing single or filing joint, you can contribute to a traditional IRA as long as you have earned income. Anyone can convert a traditional IRA to a Roth, regardless of income or marital status. You can make non-deductible contributions initially to a traditional IRA. Up to $6,000 in 2020, $7,000 if you're over age 50. First, contribute to the traditional IRA account. Convert that traditional IRA then to a Roth. That is a way to get into a Roth IRA if you exceed those income levels on just doing a standalone Roth. So do a non-deductible contribution to a traditional account and then pay those taxes, and then we can convert that over to the Roth account. Remember to aggregate your traditional IRAs when calculating the tax. Converting an employer plan dollars to a Roth IRA, eligible distributions from 401k, 403b, and 457b, and qualified plans can be rolled over to traditional or Roth IRA. Your employer will identify an eligible rollover distribution. Amounts rolled over to a Roth IRA are taxed except for any after-tax contributions. Anybody can roll over a Roth IRA regardless of income limits or marital status, even non-spouse beneficiaries. Rollovers from employer plans can be complicated and can have serious tax implications if not done correctly. So is a Roth right for you? The pros: beneficial if you expect to be in a higher tax bracket when you take the income out. So if you're 40 years old now and you think your income is going to progress, or you're going to want more income when you get to retirement age, it is a great way to be able to pay the tax now, thinking that you may be in a higher tax bracket when you go to utilize those funds, and if in the traditional method you have not paid those taxes, so then you are going to get hit with them. Qualified distributions are tax-free. It will not impact Social Security. Lifetime distributions are not required. More assets can compound tax-free for a longer period of time. You may be able to leave more to your heirs, income tax-free as well. Some of the cons: may not be appropriate if you expect to be in a lower tax bracket when you'll take payouts. So if your income is extremely high now and you think you're not going to need all of that income when you go to start withdrawing, it may not make sense, because you may have a lower tax rate at that point in time than you do now. And obviously that taking advantage of that tax break by going the traditional method could help you. But then again, that's unique to each person's situation, depending on how much income they want to see later on down the road. You pay taxes now, so it could have a potential negative impact on your Social Security. Other items: using an IRA funds to pay conversion taxes may have serious drawbacks. It may not be appropriate if you'll need to use those funds soon. Risk of future law changes is another thing that could happen. State tax treatment may differ as well. Thank you very much for your time. If you guys have any questions, contact our office. We're happy to help. I know it could be interesting and unique for each person's situation, but if you are exceeding those income levels, there are still ways to utilize a backdoor Roth method that could potentially be very advantageous for you later on in life to give you some tax-free benefits. Thank you, guys.